So you can post things all day long online, but if you really want to get your strongest talent, it's going to take you building relationships with people, organizations, pipelines that can start referring people your way that they know would be a good fit for your organization. So if you asked me, like, Melissa, I only have X amount of dollars for a recruiting strategy, where am I going to get my biggest bang for my buck? Don't assume technology is going to be the way to go. It's going to be building those relationships.
Welcome back to Tell Me Why, a podcast about and for the healthcare workforce. Thank you all for joining us. It's really hard to believe we are starting our second season. I'm Jen Wright, and I'm here with my friend, colleague, and new co-host, Beth Morgan. Beth is the Director of Clinical Affairs and Workforce at SCHA, and we are thrilled to add Beth's perspective to the podcast. We've been waiting excitedly to welcome today's guest, a workforce champion who will help us unlock one of the most dynamic and often most challenging aspects of today's workforce environment, the multi-generational workforce. Beth, would you like to introduce our guest?
I would love to. So our guest today is Dr. Melissa Furman. She is a speaker, coach, consultant, and owner of Career Potential LLC. Melissa blends academic expertise with real-world insight to help organizations tackle workplace challenges. And we've invited her here to talk about how understanding different generations can improve the workplace experience and strengthen our healthcare teams. Melissa, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic today.
Well, since we're talking about generations, I'll share that I'm a Gen Xer, more specifically a Zennial, that micro generation on the cusp of both Gen X and Millennial. I believe Beth is also a fellow Xer, right, Beth?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, fantastic. So before we dive into the specific generational dynamics, we always ask our guests to tell us why. So, what personal and professional paths led to your career focus and specifically into generational differences?
Yeah, sure. And I am a diehard Gen Xer through and through. And also, kind of a unique feature here today is we are three Gen X women, and Gen X women have some unique
Hey.
characteristics. So, hey, everybody strap in. Get ready. Here you go. You got three Xers coming your way. So, my why. So, here I consider myself a recovering academic. I worked in higher education for many years. I was a business school professor, I was a higher ed administrator. And so I have worked with generations over the last few years, and they were my students. And in the roles that I played in the university, I was very external facing. So I was often working with organizations and hospitals and businesses and government organizations who, in talking with them about other things, they would often say, "Oh my gosh, these students today," or "Oh my gosh, these young people today, I just don't know how to work with them." And so I love working with students and I love working with young professionals. So for many years, I felt like I was their voice and I was talking to their future employers on all of the great things they have to bring, but then also giving them advice on how to work with them productively in the workplace. So that's kind of my why. After almost 20 years in higher education, I felt like I wanted to hit the streets and have the impact not only in the classroom, but also out in the workforce. And I talk about a lot of different topics, but this generational dynamic topic has really taken off. And I don't think it's going away anytime soon either, as we have more and more generations entering our workforce.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So, why do you feel like understanding generations is a catalyst for a better workforce experience?
Yeah. And so for the first time in America, we have five generations present in our workforce, soon to be six, because Gen Alpha, they're teenagers. So within the next year or so, they're going to be legal to work in our workplace environments. And it is just so critical that we embrace this diversity that we're experiencing in our workplace environments and we truly understand how to work across these different generations. But more importantly, in healthcare, you guys are serving seven generations, and it's only going to continue to get more and more diverse. And so it is going to be super critical for all of us to be successful in our workplace environments, to learn how to, but also to embrace how to work with people who may be different from ourselves.
Well, Dr. Furman, you mentioned that sort of sometimes 4, 5, even 6, my goodness, 7 generations, and that can cause some friction. And so, in your experience, what are some of the biggest, points of conflict that you've seen? And more importantly, what are the communication habits that our leaders need to embrace in order to help everybody work well together?
Yeah, so you're right. We are seeing a lot of challenges, but I also tell people to kind of flip the script a little bit and also look at all of the unique opportunities that we have as a result of all of this diversity in our workplace environment. But when we're thinking about challenges, this is kind of what we're seeing. Definitely communication challenges. Different generations communicate differently based on what they experienced as children. Because anytime we're talking about any of these generational behaviors, you have to understand the way that adults are behaving today are a result of what they experienced as children. And so I often encourage people to not compartmentalize and to not generalize the generations. You really want to get to know people individually to better understand their story, to
Hmm.
understand what they experienced as children, to understand why they behave the way they do. So, with that being said, communication is definitely one of those pain points. But I'm going to peel back that onion a little bit more. It's not just communication, it's also the etiquette around communication. So, yeah, there's preferences. Certain people prefer, like, I'm a Gen Xer, I love my email. I have the most robust email filing system in the world. In a matter of 10 seconds, I can pull up an email from 10 years ago and say, this is what you said. So, yeah, we have our preferences. The millennial generation primarily likes to communicate via text. And believe it or not, the Gen Z generation, which these are the folks who are in their 20s and early 30s, they actually aren't necessarily text messaging, but they like video, but they also are yearning for face-to-face attention. So there are preferences. But what seems to be the stinger more than anything is the etiquette and professionalism around the communication. The older generations have a lot of etiquette expectations, manners, the way that they were raised. Yes, ma'am, no, sir. Dear so and so. You sign with a formal signature, you write using formal communication. Where the younger generations seem to be more casual in their communication. And that's where the pain point is coming in because the different generations find the expectations as disrespectful when the intent is not to be disrespectful, but it's perceived to be disrespectful because of their approach or their lack thereof proper etiquette in communicating. So communication definitely one of the main pain points. The other one is use of technology, but we can get into more detail about that in some of our later questions.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point that it isn't how or it isn't what, it's how.
Yeah, yeah.
So, our listeners are pretty familiar with our Work Harmony U initiative, and it champions reigniting that harmony between the work and the people doing it. So, for a
Hmm.
multi generational team, I imagine that that harmony looks different for different people. For example, the millennials might prioritize flexibility, which emphasizes that work life harmony piece, where baby boomers are valuing organizational stability. So, they're maybe connecting more with that realm of mattering at work. So, how can leaders move beyond kind of that cookie cutter one size fits all and customize the work experience to meet those distinct motivators that each generation is bringing to the table? But at the same time, without the perception of an unfairness, if people are being treated differently, that there's not that perception of unfairness.
Yeah. So the first thing I encourage people to do is don't assume. Don't assume, don't think you know what people want, and especially don't stereotype. So, yes, there are some general characteristics and preferences that we know about the different generations, but don't just assume because someone's of a certain age group that they are going to be motivated by certain things. The best thing you can do is to get to know your people. Have conversations with them, learn their story, learn about their upbringing, find out what does motivate them. And then once you gather that information, you then need to adapt your management and leadership approach to align with the mindsets and preferences and motivators of each individual person. Now, your typical Gen Xer right now is listening to this podcast, yelling at, or not listening, yeah, listening to this podcast, yelling out right now, time for that. Don't have time for that. One size, like, you got to learn how to work with me. Well, you're going to have to make time because if you don't make time to learn about your people, to adapt your leadership and management style to what aligns with their motivators and preferences, you're sure as heck not going to have time because you're not going to have anybody who wants to work with you or for
Hmm.
you. And then now you're suddenly doing the job of many people because nobody's working with you or working for you. And here's what you have to remember: these motivators aren't necessarily right or wrong or better or worse. They're just different, and they're different than yours. And so you have to take a step back and first and foremost, figure out what motivates you and why. Why are you that way? Is it just because of generational? Maybe, but it's probably because of the way you were raised. Then once you figure out you, go take time to go talk to these other people and ask them about them. And then once you have that information, figure out how you can meet somewhere in the middle and adapt and adjust. Now, let's talk about this point of fairness. This is a big issue in the workplace right now because you have older people saying, well, it's not fair. And then you have younger people saying, it's not fair. And you're hearing people often say fair. Now, fellow Gen Xers, what do we say? Suck it up. Life isn't fair. Move on, right?
True.
Because that's what we were
Yeah.
told. It's not going to fly. So rather than trying to figure out fairness, like, okay, do I need to pay somebody more money or do I need to give this one the flexibility and not this one? First of all, fair is not equal. Number one. So you have to think about that. We often think about equality and equity, which is fabulous, but fair is not always equal. And I encourage you to ask people, what would make this feel fair to you? So if you have somebody who says something like, well, it's not fair that so and so can come in late to drop their kids off at school because I didn't have that perk. I had to figure out daycare in the morning because I couldn't do that. So this isn't fair. And you say, I understand your perspective. What would make this feel fair to you? And hear what they have to say. Because fairness is subjective, and you can throw all these things at them that you think would make something be fair, but you have to understand their perceptions, their preferences, and then figure out if there's a way that you can meet somewhere in the middle. And don't be afraid to ask that question. A lot of times organizations are like, oh my gosh, Melissa, if I ask that question, they're going to be like, give me a laundry list. It has been my experience that is not the case. And in most cases, what they say is like low hanging fruit, so easy to do. And you're like, done. And then everybody's walking away feeling like they're being treated fairly.
Well, I love that you mentioned sort of motivation and kind of wants. And so with these different generations working together, everyone kind of has different expectations, different motivations. I love that you mentioned all that. And this really affects hiring and retention. So you talked about
Hmm.
messaging being so important. How are some of the strong healthcare organizations sort of shifting their messages and practices so that they're appealing to those Gen Z folks, but hanging on to their Gen X's?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not a very cost effective answer. The answer is one size does not fit all. You really need to do a little bit of everything to appeal across the different generations because the generations have such strong preferences of how they want things presented to them. So, as a healthcare organization, number one, you have to go and educate yourself about the different preferences. Again, don't make assumptions and don't suddenly put all of your eggs in that one basket. But first, go educate yourself. What are the preferences? Some people want a phone call to schedule an interview. Other people want an email. Other people want a text message, right? So go educate yourself on what those preferences are. But then you're going to have to do a little bit of all. Some people say to me, well, we're modern, we're relevant, we post on Facebook, our job postings. And I'm like, okay, great. Are you recruiting a 50-year-old? Because our younger folks Facebook, right? And they're like, but like I can't afford to like put it on this job board, plus put it here and plus put it there and plus put it there, plus put it there. First of all, with the new introduction of AI tools, you probably can find a more cost-effective way to post in one place and it gets sent to 5 different places. But if you're not savvy in that area yet, you have to look at those 5 different areas or 5 different things you need to be doing and find a way to find the most cost-effective way to be doing all 5 because that's what it's going to take. There's not just one magic wand you can wave to get everybody.
Organizations or that stand out to you of that are getting it right? that have done a good job in that messaging?
Yes, but I'm afraid to share them with you all because you're going to go
No
run. So,
worries.
all right. So let me think. Let me go back. For example, one company, ADP, payroll software company, awesome. If you go look at their job postings are different than their job descriptions because the job posting is almost like a marketing ad to get people excited about wanting to come work for them. But ADP is a highly technical company and the services they provide are highly technical. If they listed all of those technicalities in their job postings, no one would apply because nobody would know what they're doing. So they have done a really great job in looking at their job postings and linking them to their job descriptions and looking at the recruitment as a marketing effort. So that's one example that I can share that I'm comfortable sharing.
I feel like that's a really good example of it's not a copy and paste. It really does matter. The messaging should align with the platform because the platform is who's drawing the people that you're trying to reach. So being thoughtful about how you're messaging it
Yeah.
is really important.
And the application process has to be easy. Like it can't take more than 2 clicks. It has to be easy. And I'm telling you, use the technology that exists out there, the different platforms, the social media channels where people can just go and click a button and apply that way. But also, don't forget the number one successful recruiting strategy is referrals and face-to-face contact. So you can post things all day long online, but if you really want to get your strongest talent, it's going to take you building relationships with people, organizations, pipelines that can start referring people your way that they know would be a good fit for your organization. So if you asked me like, Melissa, I only have X amount of dollars for a recruiting strategy, where am I going to get my biggest bang for my buck? Don't assume technology is going to be the way to go. It's going to be building those relationships, which I know Gen X, we don't have time for that. Like, I don't have time to do it. It's time consuming. But at the end of the day, that's where you're going to get your best ROI.
What I'm hearing you say too is something that we like to tell the organizations that we work with is that retention is also a powerful recruitment tool. Because to your point about face to face and word of mouth, and if the folks that are working there are happy and joyful and fulfilled and motivated, then everyone that knows them is going to know that. And if they aren't, they're also going to know that. Your recruitment can be, the word of mouth of the folks and the experience of the people that are already working there.
Yeah. And I would encourage you to focus your efforts on retaining your people within your organization. Let them move around because here's what we do know about the younger folks. Because again, I have my fellow Gen Xers talking about career ladders and we're going to promote upward mobility. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Again, you're recruiting a Gen Xer because knowing what we know about the younger generations, they don't think in ladders. As a matter of fact, may not even necessarily think in the context of career. They think in the context of success. And they may have 5, 6, 7 careers throughout their lifetime. And your focus may need to shift on how can we help them have their 5, 6, 7 careers within our healthcare system, within our organization? And how can we retain them? So, not to go back and talk about ADP again, but ADP does in house career fairs where they
Wow.
allow their employees certain days of the year where they go around and they learn about the different departments and units and opportunities and learn about what credentials they need and additional trainings that they're going to need to try to keep them within the organization. I think healthcare systems need to start thinking like that as well. How can we take the people we have working for us and help them grow and give them permission and exposure to different opportunities? And that's, I think, going to be part of the secret sauce to keep the young people.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too. Absolutely. Talking about, giving them permission kind of leads me into my next question about psychological safety and how
Hmm.
essential that is for a healthy and fulfilled workforce. So we know that different generations have varying levels of comfort providing and receiving feedback, especially when that feedback is upward. So, how do you advise leaders for tailoring leadership feedback styles when they're talking about constructive criticism, perceived mistakes, to make sure that regardless of the generation, people still feel comfortable and safe to voice their concerns, to be innovative, and to contribute their best, and feel safe in doing so.
Yeah. And let me tell you something, psychological safety is important for everybody, right? Regardless of the age. Here's the difference. The younger generations demand it, right? The older generations, we've always wanted it and we need it, but we didn't expect it or demand it. Or maybe we expected it. And if we didn't get it, we tolerated not having it. But it is going to be so critical moving forward. Top priority that leaders need to be thinking about is how to create these safe environments where people are thriving, right? You want to create environments where people are thriving. So when it comes down to feedback, just like I said earlier, don't make assumptions. Ask people, ask them like, hey, how would you like to receive feedback from me? Or what are your feedback preferences? Because here's what I've heard from the younger folks. They say, Dr. Furman, we want to receive feedback. However, the only time I receive it is when I did something wrong. And they're like, so if all I'm ever going to hear is when I do things wrong, I don't want to hear it at all because it kind of demoralizes them. Well, and then the fellow Gen X, or not to keep picking on us, we're like, I'm giving you a paycheck, aren't I? Like, isn't giving you a paycheck enough? Like, if I'm giving you a paycheck, you're doing a good job, right? And if you're not, I'm going to tell you. The younger folks want feedback and they want positive feedback and then they want constructive feedback, right? If you think about the world they live in social media, they put something online, whatever they ate for dinner last night or new clothes that they bought or new haircut. Within 10 seconds, they get 300 pieces of feedback. Now they show up in your workplace and maybe they only get feedback once, maybe twice a year via performance review.
Great
They
point.
Mhm.
want that ongoing feedback. So the older generations perceive that as, oh my gosh, we have to give them a trophy for everything. We have to constantly tell them they're doing a good job. And I'm like, no, just give them the feedback. Like, hey, I appreciate you. I appreciate that you got that to me so quickly. I appreciate that you collaborated with other departments to solve that problem. Like, just vocalize it. Like, tell them,
Mhm.
like, I appreciate you. And then when you do have constructive feedback, this is where it is critical that you know your people. Everybody has different personalities, different behavioral styles. And me, I'm a very blunt, direct person. If you're going to give me feedback, you just tell me and I'm good. My feelings are not hurt. I'm not going to cry about it. As a matter of fact, good luck if I'm even going to listen to your feedback. That's my personality style. But then you take some other people that you know. Some people are very emotional people and they're going to internalize and process that feedback. So you need to know that about them. So you give the feedback in the way that they want to receive it. And you may have to try the sandwich method, one positive, constructive, one positive. You may have to soften the approach. You may have to maybe go on a walk with them rather than sitting behind a big desk. The common theme of today's podcast is that one size does not fit all. You have to invest the time to learn your people, and you learn them by having conversations with them and asking them. And be ready. They may not know what they don't know. So they may say, when you say, hey, how do you like to receive feedback? And they're like, well, I don't know. You could say, do you prefer for me to give it to you directly? Do you want me to email it to you? Do you want me to give it to you in a meeting? Do you care if other people are around? Like, you may have to give them context and they'll be like, no, I don't like that. No, I don't like that. Okay, no, I'm open to that. And then you create this feedback loop too, because here's the other thing. The younger generations are used to giving feedback, sharing their thoughts, and having decision making authority. So when they're showing up in your workplace environments right now as a leader, you also have to be open and receptive to receiving feedback from them. And some people really get put off by it, right, guys? Because like they're just spouting their mouth off. So instead, create opportunities, create structured time for them to give you that feedback. But I would encourage you, create those opportunities to do it because they want to give it. And when you listen to their feedback, they feel valued, they feel respected, they feel safe. So go ahead and create those channels to do that.
That really
I
does
love that.
feel like a sort of kind of day one orientation kind of thing, right? You're sitting down, you're learning, and then that's your question, right? How do you like to receive feedback? I don't know that I've really heard that early on at an organization.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
Love it.
And I would add to those questions too. And I would say, hey, what are your work preferences? Are you a morning person? Are you an afternoon person? And I would also communicate like communication preferences, specifically in the context of urgency. Because what you're going to find, and the older folks really struggle with this, especially managers and leaders who are super busy, creating some kind of communication protocol. Like, listen, if you need me right away and it is critical, you call me. If it is this urgent but not critical, you can text me. If it's important, not critical, not urgent, you email me. And if it's something that's not so important, you just wait until we have our weekly meetings and you kind of define that for them. That way you're creating those feedback loops and you're also being accessible and communicating those preferences. So that way you're not being bombarded by text messages all day. And then the older folks are offended by that. Like, why are you texting me? Have those conversations on day one. Day one,
Yeah,
get it
right.
out, communicate those expectations.
Definitely.
It's a lot. It's
You're
hard.
No, it's incredible, and it just it it's making my brain go off in all these fires of, "Oh, I wanna ask about this, I wanna ask about this." But
Right.
in the to respect our listeners' time and your time, Dr. Furman, I won't belabor that, but just kinda emphasize I love the proactive communication, right? So no one, regardless of generation, I wouldn't assume, loves to be held to a standard they are unaware of or an expectation that has not been made clear. That's when it starts to feel that kind of unfair word that we were talking about earlier. Like, well, I didn't know that that was what you wanted, how you wanted it, when you wanted it. I probably would have accomplished it had that been communicated to me. So,
Hmm.
so much conflict could be avoided if we just have those conversations earlier instead of in
Hmm.
response to something.
Yeah. And one of my new talks this year in trainings is on accountability because a lot of organizations are struggling with things like trust, respect, and accountability.
Mhm.
And the common denominator of all three is that communication and that proactive communication. But I say, you can't hold people accountable for things that you didn't clearly communicate. But then you have people say, well, I shouldn't have to communicate to them that they have to come to work on time. That should just be assumed. They should know that. I know you guys are all laughing or like that they have to dress a certain way. Don't assume. Day one, communicate with them. Listen, this is what on time means, but you don't only just communicate to them what you expect, you have to communicate to them why you expect it. And this is why your self awareness is so critical because some of you can't answer the why. You're like, well, I don't know. You have to come to work on time because you have to, because that's what you do. Take time to learn about yourself first and really think about it. The why is listen, we have customer service obligations and we need to be here to serve our patients and our customers. And to do that systematically, we need to have a process in place where we have a team of people coming in at a certain time. And if you're not coming in on time or you have one or two people who aren't, it kind of hurts the system. And when you hurt the system, we ultimately can't provide the care and customer service that we're expected to provide. Now, y'all, I
Mhm.
make that sound super easy, right? Like when I say that, it just kind of, can you tell I've said it more than once? But you have to figure out your why. And let me tell you something. If your why is because I said so, or that's the way I've always done it, it's not going to fly.
You can see these
It's not
fellow
going to
Gen
fly.
Xers shaking our head like, "Mm-mm, can't stand it.
Yeah. Can I
Grew
tell
up
you a
with it,
quick
but can't
story?
stand it."
So I have
Yes.
time for a quick story. I'll
Yes,
make it as
please.
quick
We
as
love
possible.
stories.
So here I am on a university campus, and we had like a student advising center within our college that I had created. And it was, I oversaw the student workers, and it was so important to me that they were there from 8 to 5. And they had to be there at 8 to 5. And they weren't coming in at 8 o'clock and they were coming in late. And I said to them, y'all, 8 to 5, this is so important, blah, blah, blah. Thankfully, one of the students had the courage to speak up to me and say, Dr. Furman, can you help me understand the 8 to 5? And I'm like, well, because we're a professional office, blah, blah, blah. We have customer service obligations. Like I said, all of this. And they said, no offense, Dr. Furman, but go look around on a college campus. There's no college students walking around at 8 a.m. They're like, why do we? So, me being a good leader, I said, well, what do you propose? Help me understand. What do you propose? And they said, I think we should be open from 10 to 7 because most classes are at 10 o'clock. More students are up. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to say 7 because the last class offering is from 5:30 to 6:30. So if we're open to 7, we're actually open 30 minutes beyond the last class, which is actually providing better customer service than if we were open 8 to 5.
Nailed it.
And
Bam.
I said, brilliant. Like,
Yes.
freaking fabulous. Brilliant. Let's run with it. So I say that because the Gen Xer in me, I wanted to just give him the stiff arm and say, no, 8 to 5, because that's what we do. And that's what's professional. And that's what's expected in a professional workplace environment. But I gave them the opportunity to kind of share their insights. And they had some really great ideas that made a lot of sense. Right. So I share that example because when you're communicating what you expect, communicate the why, and just make sure that you've done some serious self reflection to answer your own why before that comes up.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we've talked a lot about the challenges with having multiple generations, but there's also some huge advantages as long as it's
Yeah.
managed well. So what are
Hmm.
the things that leaders can sort of tap into to make sure everyone's strengths are represented? And then are you seeing organizations that do this intentionally?
Yeah. I mean, everybody has something to teach and everybody has something to be taught. Right. And especially in this ever changing environment that we're in, we need to leverage everybody's knowledge. I tell organizations all the time when you hire people in part of the onboarding process, you better embed leadership training. And they're like, I'm sorry? And I'm like, yeah, because for us to be successful in this landscape moving forward, everybody needs to be thinking and behaving like a leader. And we need to look at these differences, let's say, that we have, these uniquenesses that we have in our workplace right now. And we need to lean into it and we need to embrace it and figure out how to leverage it. And how can we make sure that everybody is learning from one another and creating those different opportunities for everybody to learn? Because here's the thing. It is human nature for us to focus on the differences. We're wired to do that. That's how our brains work. So you have to really empower people to focus on what one people have in common. Let's figure out, what do we all have in common? What's something we can rally around, a common interest, a common cause? Let's all rally around that. And then let's take these opportunities to learn about each other's strengths and then let's leverage them and teach them to one another. So some organizations have done this by creating special interest groups that are strategically cross generational, reading groups or TV groups or things like that, where you attract people from different generations. But then I've also seen them create groups that are intentionally cross generational with the understanding and expectation that they're going to learn from one another. For example, one organization, I'm trying to remember I don't remember what they call the group, but the purpose is to teach across the groups. One meeting, they had the older folks teaching the younger folks how to change a tire, which I thought was
That's
great, but a lot of
great.
the new cars have
Yeah.
run flats. But still, it's a great skill to learn. How to sew a button on your
Right.
pants, you know? And then the younger folks were teaching the older folks, how do you sync your phone? How do you airdrop photos from phone to phone? So in that particular case, those groups are very intentional in teaching each other things that they may not know. And they actually like have a sign up sheet of like, what do you want to know more about? And who can like come in and teach that? So that's one. But the other ones, you find common interests and you invite people and you create a safe, inclusive environment where people from the different generations want to come together. But if you can't create those special interest groups and you're kind of leading a multi generational team, create opportunities for them to get to know one another. Now, this can be done before a huddle or before a meeting. You just take 5 minutes and you put a question out there. And there's some really cool cards you can buy where you can come up with a question and everybody has to answer it. Or you can create lunches or off-site events where they can learn about one another, because the more they learn about each other, it's going to help them better learn how to work with one another. And you can really embrace what everybody has to offer.
So, Melissa, your insights feel incredibly practical and timely. And like you said, this is not a situation that is going away. In fact, it's probably going to become more and more layered. So, for our listeners looking to make some, intentional, strategic decisions and improvements, we hope that you take all of these suggestions to heart. So, before we wrap up, are there any final thoughts that we maybe haven't
Yeah.
covered with regards to the multi-generational collaboration? Any resources that you would recommend folks to tap into?
Yeah. I want to leave with this parting thought. And it's going to be tailored towards Gen X, but it can be beneficial for all the generations. And what I tell Gen X is to get out of the way. We have to, for us to successfully navigate this future that we have coming our way, everybody on your team, every single one of you, everybody listening to this podcast right now, you're gonna have to learn how to work with people who are different from you, right? And it's gonna take every single one of us. So I say to my Gen Xers, get out of the way. And what I say is clear the runway for these younger folks to come in with these ideas. But what I say to my older folks, don't clear the runway and metaphorically leave the airport. You need to clear the runway, and you may need to give your younger folks a flight path because this is all metaphorically, right? They have a lot of really great ideas, but they don't know how to launch them and they don't know where to go with them. So you may need to give them that flight path. Take your maturity, take your experience, give them that flight path. You may even need to give them a reliable airplane to launch the ideas because they may not have the resources and the experience that you have to launch them. And my older folks, you may even need to metaphorically get in the cockpit with them. Because let's say they are able to launch that idea and they get up in the air, you've given them that flight path, they know where they're going with it, and then suddenly they start experiencing turbulence. Well, all of you here who have more than 5 years experience, we all know very few things go as planned and you're going to experience turbulence. So you may need to be that voice of reason, where you're in the cockpit with them saying, listen, it's okay. We'll get through this. The airplane can handle it. And my older folks in that cockpit, you may even need to be the one who lands the plane because these younger folks haven't ever had to land a plane before. So you may need to land it for them and show them. So everybody just take a deep breath, focus what you have in common, be open to teaching, be open to being taught, and figure out how we can work together and how we can land this plane together because it is going to take all of us and we got to lean into it.
So many amazing tips and advice in the last, what have we been, about half an hour or so. So if we have sparked people's interest, and I think we have, how can people find out more about you, your work, your resources? How can they connect with you directly?
Yeah, well, obviously I'm on social media. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And then I also have my website, unlockcareerpotential.com. And on my website, you can access some additional resources that you can download. You can also watch different YouTube videos and such that I have posted up there. But here's what I want to encourage you to do. Don't leave this podcast feeling like you need to go research more information about the different generations. What I'm going to encourage you to do, leave this podcast and go learn about you and then go learn about your people. Don't worry about the generations per se. Look at people as unique individuals and then figure out how you can work with unique individuals. And that's what I want to leave you with.
That is the true gem. Thank you so much for that. So, if you wouldn't mind, we'd love to put that information that you just shared in the episode notes so people have some direct links to find you and find out more about your work. Thank you so much for telling us why, for sharing your recommendations and unlocking the power of a multi generational workforce with us. A few key takeaways that I heard are specifically for Work Harmony U, it requires a customized and intentional strategy for each person, not just each generation. That genuine curiosity and the etiquette around how we communicate are the powerful tools in bridging communication gaps and avoiding the dreaded assumptions. And finally, that unique combinations of generational strengths is actually a true competitive advantage for healthcare organizations. So at the end of the day, it's about listening and seeking to understand each other. This has been a truly enlightening and very actionable conversation. So to our audience, thank you for listening. To learn more about the Y Initiative, which focuses on a fulfilling workplace experience, visit scy.org. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, share the podcast with your friends and colleagues, and of course, follow the show so you never miss an episode. Thank you all so much for listening.